Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at out in TV land. Welcome to WeBeam TV, and this is Taboo Talk with Steve and Ray. My name is Ray Amanat out of sunny Port Richey, Florida, and my friend out of an undisclosed safe house area somewhere in Texas is Mr. Steve Reed. How you doing, Steve?
I am doing fantastic. Ray, how are you?
I am awesome. So we started collaborating on creating this show, Taboo Talk, a long time ago, and we've had a few hiccups. Steve, you want to share your hiccup first? We're supposed to start this show about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but Steve had an injury that I'm going to let him talk about, and then I had my hiccup because I had COVID recently, so I've just recovered. Tested negative from it, so I'm good to go. But Steve, tell us about what happened to you.
Well, my actually in March of last year, 2021, where I had a skydiving accident. Well, actually, I fell off a ladder, but skydiving sounds a lot more glamorous than falling off a ladder. I'm 65 years old, and you'd think I'd know how to climb a ladder by now. But then I had a little incident along the way back just before Christmas, and I was on my knee scooter because of other complications. And you would think I'd know how to use a knee scooter by now since the middle part of March last year. And well, I fell. If you can remember the old Laugh-In TV show with Artie Johnson and his rain slicker and how he would be on his tricycle and he'd just tip over. Well, that was me. And unfortunately, I broke my leg again. So I'm in a cast right now, but life will be okay. I will recover one day.
So you went through a whole reconstructive surgery with the rod and pins and everything in there.
Yeah. The first surgery failed actually back in July, early August. And the screws actually started coming out. And so they did a completely new surgery in the middle of September. And I was just about ready to start putting full weight on my leg and walking and so forth. And the doctor said, give it another couple of weeks. Let's get a little more healing going on. And then I fell off my scooter.
Well, I'm hoping for a very speedy recovery for you.
Yeah, so am I.
Like I said, I had COVID a few weeks ago and did the self-quarantine, and we had to cancel a lot of the other interviews that we were going to do. And now we're here, our first show, and I'm excited. I hope you are as well.
Absolutely.
We're going to get some viewers on here. We've got a lot of good speakers that we're going to be interviewing in the future. So, Taboo Talk, let's get your version of why you wanted to do this show, and then I'll share my version, and then we'll learn a little bit more about you. We want all the viewers to get to know the hosts before we get into the meat of what Taboo Talk is all about. So
that makes total sense, right? Well, you and I a lot of networking over the past almost 2 years since we first met right after the release of this COVID virus. And it's so funny because it seemed like every meeting we were in together, I would say something and then you would have a follow-up, or you would say something and I would have a follow-up of some sort. And we just connected. And it wasn't just about business things that we were talking about. We were talking about just about anything. And that branched off into, sex trafficking and drugs and border security and Second Amendment rights. And I mean, you name it. And I don't know if it was you or me that started. I think it was you. I think you're the culprit. And we just started talking about, it would be fun if we just started doing a podcast together. And for years, I've thought about doing something like that, but I never wanted to do it alone because I didn't think I was entertaining enough by myself, and it would be nice to be able to bounce things off of somebody else. And so when we started connecting, doing those kinds of things, it just made sense. So That's my version, and I'm going to stick to it, right?
Well, I personally myself had always thought about getting into a blog, a radio show, or a TV show. And when this opportunity came about, I met up with WeBeam TV at a networking function of all things. And I just said, I got to do this. That's when I approached you and said, Steve, do you want to do this together? And let's talk about topics that people feel uncomfortable talking about. And that's where the title Taboo Talk came. We do have a Facebook page, so if you want to look up Taboo Talk with Ray and Steve on Facebook and sign up for that, we'll be airing these videos and other tidbit information on there as well. So let's get into who you are, Steve Reed. So you're a life coach, and I know there's a stigma of being called a life coach or a mentoring coach, but let's get to how long have you been coaching and what got you started into this, and maybe talk about the stigma of coaching.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna start from way back in the beginning, back in the late 80s, early 90s. I started doing some research on personality types and the temperaments for the different personalities. My undergraduate degree was in psychology, and I was always fascinated with the thought of why people did different things and why they say the things they say, their behaviors, their actions, responses, reactions, those sorts of things. And somebody introduced me to the DISC temperament program back in the early 90s, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I understood it very quickly. And so then I started teaching it, and I started coaching different people, utilizing the understanding and the methodologies with the DISC program in mind. And then one day somebody came to me and they said, well, Steve, I understand all this personality stuff, but can you help me on a life basis? Now, that wasn't the terminology originally. That's actually a fairly new terminology. Back then it was mentoring or just, could you help me? And with all of my experience and working with other people in different facets through church and through other organizations, I started life coaching. And then one day somebody said something to me that they were having problems in their marriage. Could you help me with my marriage? And so I had already been through a number of different programs for marriages and how to improve the marriage. And so I started doing some marriage coaching as well. And then about 2.5 years ago, my friend Tom Ziglar, Tom is the proud son of Zig Ziglar, world famed author and speaker, motivational speaker. And Tom was in the process of launching his first book, which is called Choose to Win. And he had put together a coaching system. And lo and behold, I'd been using the Ziglar mindset and a lot of the materials for many years at that point in time. And so I signed up to be one of their very first coaches in the Choose to Win coaching program. So today I'm an executive coach. I'm a licensed coach through the Ziglar organization. I'm a certified life and a certified marriage and pre-marriage coach. That's how I got started.
Wow. So what is the difference between being a coach, a therapist, or a counselor, Steve?
Well, for me, generally, for the most part, and understand this is a generality, but for the most part, therapists and counselors get all of their experience out of a textbook or out of a classroom study or setting of some sort. Now, I've got a lot of background in the coaching aspect and personal development things, but a lot of the understanding that I have in the coaching process comes from personal experience. And I tell people when I'm working with a brand new client, I've got 4 different foundational principles that I work from. Number one, I've been a Christian since 1972, almost 50 years now. And I've read the Bible forwards and backwards on more than one occasion. And I glean a lot of my truth from God's word. And along the way, he has given me a level of discernment that frankly, I don't understand. And sometimes I don't want it, but I've got it. And then my undergraduate degree, as I mentioned, is in psychology. I've had literally thousands of hours of continuing education, but probably the biggest area that I glean from is my own personal life. Uh, I've had a lot of things that have happened to me, and I've managed to make it through all of those different things. I've been through the divorce. Unfortunately, I had some some challenges along the way. We'll just leave it at that. And God has given me the ability to glean truths from those things, and then I just share the truths from those things. So the primary difference between myself and a counselor or a therapist is I go a lot from real life experience as opposed to just from a textbook.
Well, and you are old, so you do have a lot of life experiences to share with everyone. So, just kidding. Why should somebody hire you or want to hire you as a coach?
Well, again, Ray,
so if I was looking for someone to help me, why would I want to look at a coach versus a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, or anything like that?
I think it really goes back to the fact that I've got life experience. And that life experience, frankly, experience is the best teacher of any kind. You can get more knowledge from an experience than you can from a textbook. And just the fact that I've been down the road with so many different things in my life, I think adds a lot to that opportunity to be able to share with people and to be able to grow with people. I had one of my clients not too long ago that made the comment that the difference between me and other counselors that they've worked with in the past is the fact that I listen. And I'm not going to say that a counselor or a therapist doesn't listen, but I listen with a different set of ears because I can relate to people in a lot of the things that they've dealt with. I had somebody that made a comment to me a while back. They said, well, what would you know about divorce? You're happily married. I said, yeah, how about finding out one day after 22 years that your wife was having multiple affairs? I would say that's a life experience. So I can glean from those things. So the life experience is probably one of the biggest things that I bring to the table with people.
So would you also say that it's not like a cookie cutter program where here's my syllabus, this is what we're going to go through, check this box, check this box, check this box, and then I'll put you in a category, and once you're in that category, then this is how I'm going to help you. You go a lot deeper than what most people would do. Would that be correct?
You're a funny man when you say I've got a cookie cutter.
No, I'm in comparison to there are other places that are like
there are cookie cutters. Yes. Now, frankly, when I'm working with somebody on their goal setting and mindset things and helping them get to the next level in life, I generally do that through the Ziegler coaching systems that I work with. But when I'm dealing with somebody on just a general life type of a coaching program or a marriage coaching program, I've got some things I know I want to cover. But when that client says something, that may change my direction completely as to where I'm going with some of the different things. I think one of the things also is I have a lot of stories. And I generally try and use those stories to help the client relate better to the things that I'm working with. And so when I'm sharing a story, then they can generally understand from a story better than from me just citing specific things from a textbook.
Sure.
And I'll give you one case in point. When I'm working with somebody on their goal setting and taking action in different things, I love telling a story that goes like this, Ray. There are 5 bullfrogs that are sitting on lily pads. 3 of them decide that they are going to jump off the lily pads. How many frogs are left? And most people say, well, it's only 2 frogs that are left. But what they don't understand is those 3 only decided to jump off. They never took action. So we talk a lot about what action steps you're going to take in order to resolve your issues, whatever the issues are.
Sure. No, I like that. I like that. So, Steve, what makes you an effective coach?
Well, again, the experience and listening, I think, are the two primary things. I had one client that actually laughed at me, and she said, "Well, you got a story for everything." I said, "Well, I want you to be able to understand." And one of the things that I do when I'm working with couples in a marriage coaching capacity is I will generally ask them a lot of different questions, but as we're talking about listening skills and really better communication skills, I always tell them to rephrase the things that you are saying. So if your spouse doesn't understand exactly what you were saying, rephrase it. And the way I rephrase oftentimes is by telling a story of some sort. And I learned the phrase many years ago when I was in outside sales or direct sales. I learned the phrase facts tell, stories sell. Well, I can give you a fact from a textbook. And frankly, I've gotten rid of most of my psychology textbooks. I think I may have them in a box someplace in a garage. But generally, what happens is I'll have a story that relates to the specific thing that couple is dealing with at that very point in time. And when I share the story, they generally come back and they say, "Oh, that makes sense. I understand that." And then they can implement things based on the story that I was sharing with them. I'll give you one real quick example. I had a couple that I was working with, and I talk a lot with the couples about the differences between the way men think and the way women think. And while I can't possibly think exactly how a woman thinks, I've read it in a textbook someplace. Actually, I've gotten it from my wife and other women I've worked with in the past. But this particular couple, they were having a problem in their home. And the husband decided that instead of working with me in a session, that he was going to take care of this particular task. She was very upset because the way she looked at it, she saw it as he didn't care as much about the relationship as she did. So he, on the other hand, thought he was doing something to protect the family. So as we were finally talking together a few days later, I helped them both understand those different perspectives, those different points of view. He's got his knight in shining armor outfit on, his protection. He's going to slay that dragon. She, on the other hand, wanted to build the relationship. When they started listening to each other and understood what the perspective was from the other person, all of a sudden it made total sense. And they both got on the same page thereafter. So that's just an example of a story that I've shared with other couples to help them understand each other and the communication methods that we would talk about.
Yeah, that's going to be one of our taboo topics that we're going to talk about in the future is the difference in communication at home versus at work versus with your friends.
Yes.
You act differently when you're in those situations, and I'm excited to get into that a little bit more deeper in one of our future shows.
Yeah.
So what is your long-term plan with your coaching or speaking practice?
Oh man, I've got so many long-range plans. I'm actually in the process of developing a number of different online courses. And somebody asked me a while back how I can possibly reach more prospective clients and more people and help more people. Well, it's only me. I've done a lot of group coaching in the past, but one of the biggest challenges is that the most people I can work with in a group is 30 or 40 people, and even that is difficult. I can work with a few more people, but it's a lot less personal. Well, so in the process, I'm launching several different online courses. I'm going through the video process of putting those things together right now. So if somebody needs some help dealing with emotional baggage, I've got a program. It's actually available right now. And the title of the course is Finding Emotional Freedom. and actually take people through about a 2.5 hour program of video, but then about 10 hours of content where exercises and things that they have to do. And at the end of the program, I'm going to show people how they can get some emotional relief. So I'm doing a lot of different online programs. So that's one of the biggest things. I'm doing a lot of public speaking, both through the executive coaching program as well as the emotional freedom program. And I teach other programs also, like goal setting and some dreaming and some things related to the DISC program, so people better understand their personality temperaments and the temperaments of those other folks that they work with.
So, you're also a published author, so we want to get into some of the books that you've written. Although you are my brother from another mother, one of your books is entitled My Half-Brother, A Journey of Hope and Grace. You want to just kind of touch on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I've got a pretty vivid imagination myself. And probably 30, maybe 35 years ago, I started thinking what it would be like to have Jesus as your big brother. Now, I'm the youngest of four boys in my family, and I thought many years ago, I wonder what life would have been like 2,000 years ago with your big brother being literally perfect. And so I started thinking about some really goofy ideas. For instance, you're playing hide and seek one day with your big brother, and he can always find you, but you can never find him. That's because he's the son of God and he can do all kinds of stuff, jump over tall buildings in a single bound and, pass through walls or whatever. Now, I don't know if he did any of those things when he was growing up. And then I started thinking about the story about Jesus going to Jerusalem for Passover with his parents and how mom and dad lost him. And here I am, I'm James, the half brother, the oldest of the four siblings. And I'm all excited because he's going to get a whooping when they finally find him. And then he talked his way out of it. So that's how it started. And then about 20 years ago, I was involved in a very large church in North Dallas, and I was one of the disciples. We did a big Christmas pageant, and I just started thinking more and more about the stories about what it would have been like to watch Jesus in ministry and talk about his death, his resurrection, and it just evolved from there. And I started writing the book, My Half-Brother, and actually published the book initially in 2014, did a re-release in 2017. So that's the first book, and that was a lot of fun as I was putting that one together.
So your second book is Restored by Grace.
Yes.
Where you talk about broken vessels usable for God's glory.
Yep. Well, as a coach, I've done a lot of group coaching, as I mentioned earlier, and in that coaching, the book is actually 10 stories of people that I've worked with over the years. And I've changed all the names. I've changed their occupations in many cases and in the details, so no one would ever know who the different people are. But I tell the stories about how the people were broken and then what we went through in order to get them so that they were healed vessels. And I can tell you a ton of stories about people that I've worked with, but these are 10 of my favorite stories. And I know, Ray, we're going to be talking about the drug trafficking and sex trafficking down the road, but one of the stories I tell them, the story is about a girl named Candy. And she was one of the young gals that I was working with. When she was about 13 years old, she was molested and then raped repeatedly and then gang raped. And then the guy that initially started the process actually essentially kidnapped her and took her to a major city in Texas and sold her into prostitution, where she stayed for about 10 years. And when I got to work with her, she had actually been arrested, spent time in jail, was in a halfway house. So she had spent some time in jail and dealing with the crime that was involved, but she never dealt with the emotional side of things. So I was able to help her through the emotional side of things and literally go through a forgiveness process to the person that started her down that road. When we were finished, she looked in the mirror and she said, "I am a princess." And that's the way we left things.
And your third book, which stems from you falling off of a ladder, it's called Lessons from the Crutches, How I Learned Not to Use Crutches as Crutches.
No, right. We're going to have to get this straight. It was a skydiving accident, remember? I'm 65, I know how to climb a ladder. So no. Now, actually, when I hit the ground, I looked down at my leg and I realized that my foot was pointing in a direction that it's not normally supposed to point. And I immediately said, "God, I know this is going to hurt, so please take the pain away." He did, and drugs worked very well to take the pain away. But then the next question that I had for God was, "Okay, God, I know you've got lessons that you want me to learn. What exactly are those lessons? And then who am I supposed to teach?" So while I was in the hospital, getting ready for the surgery and then recovering over the next few weeks, I just started writing down some chapter headings about some of the different lessons that I was learning. Things like have an attitude of gratitude, plan ahead, be prepared. Call on advisors. Those are the kinds of things that I knew most of those things, but they were being refreshers. So it actually turned out it's a 35 lesson devotional book that is great for you on an individual basis, but it's also a great little tool if you're trying to do some things, some practical things with your young children. It's a great opportunity. It's just simple, one-page little lessons to learn, and then I followed up with a brief prayer and a scripture.
That is outstanding. So all those books are available on your Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the other online.
I've just got it on Amazon as well as on my website right now.
Okay. And we'll get more information on that. So
sure.
We want to just give you guys a lot of information about who Steve is and who I am so that you guys have a good idea of our background and why we choose the topics that we're going to choose that are uncomfortable for people to talk about. You know, like we said earlier, we're going to try to make them fact-based. It's going to be Steve's opinion, my opinion, but we're going to try to make it as factual as possible, especially with a lot of the guests that we bring on to talk about these topics. And we just want to kind of stimulate a conversation, a healthy conversation with your peers, your family members, to talk about sensitive issues that are going on in our country these days. So enough about you. Let's talk about me.
Of course. All right. So, Ray, the first thing for me is you're an expert in martial arts. How in the world did you get started in martial arts?
So, for the longest time when I was growing up, I was a target of bullying from elementary school through high school. And I always looked at the TV shows Kung Fu or Kung Fu Theater with all the different martial arts movies. And all the TV shows that had some type of a hero, whether it's Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, Zorro, the Lone Ranger, there was always a hero, and I always pictured myself as being the underdog that becomes that hero. So I got into martial arts at the age of 15 because I didn't want to be the target of bullying or violence anymore. And from the age 15 all the way up to currently, where I'm still training, I have been doing different forms of martial arts because each art that I trained under didn't always give me 100% of the answers I was looking for. So I pursued other styles of martial arts to complement what I had learned to be able to answer what-if questions that my students, as well as myself, would have. You know, what if I get taken to the ground, what do I do? Or what if they have a weapon, what do I do, or how do I handle that situation? So, you know, it's been a long journey, and I'm still learning. I don't tell people that I'm a master of any martial art. Let me fix my earpiece here. I let people know that I'm a lifetime student. I'm always learning. I'm just really good at what I've learned because I implement it into practice. You know, people say knowledge is power, and I beg to differ. It's applied knowledge is power. You have to practice something over and over again and learn how to apply that knowledge so that you have the power to be able to pull it off in whatever situation comes your way.
Okay, so if let's say I was a beginner and I decide I want to learn martial arts, what is the best martial art that I should learn?
Well, that's a common question that people ask me, and my answer to that is there isn't a better martial art. You know, you can take somebody that's phenomenal at Taekwondo, which is a Korean art form, and put them up against somebody who is average at judo, a Japanese martial art. Taekwondo guy is going to win, but that doesn't mean their system is better. It's just they were better at what they did. For that same token, you can take a really good judo jiu-jitsu player that is phenomenal. They've been doing it since childhood up, and put them up against a boxer, kickboxer, striker, and the jiu-jitsu person might have their way with them. That doesn't mean jiu-jitsu is the better art. It's they're better at what they do. So it's not the art form, it's the person and how they apply that knowledge to a given situation. So I would always recommend visit as many different martial arts schools, look at the students. A student is a reflection of the teacher. If the students are sloppy, chances are the teacher's sloppy. If the students are phenomenal and outstanding and they're showing respect and they show good athleticism, good sportsmanship, and knowledge of how to apply the techniques, then that's a school I would look into. I would also look into schools that offer introductory or trial programs, because you don't know if you're going to gel with that coach or trainer. Just like with you as a coach, sure, somebody might look at you and say, no, you're not my style, I'm going to look for a different coach. Or somebody's going to fall in love with you and say, I want you to mentor me and work with me, help bring my life to that clarity that I'm looking for. For me, people come to me because they want to learn how to protect themselves, how to be safe. My main focus when I first got into martial arts was self-defense. Now you go to some martial arts training centers that they're more about the sport side of martial arts, the competition side, not as much as the self-defense side. So visit as many clubs, look at what their curriculum is like, and if the curriculum is what you're looking for, then that's where I would make my starting point. And you know, people say, should I do different martial arts? I got my black belt in Taekwondo at first, but then I started learning judo and Muay Thai and Kali Silat and Humdo and a whole bunch of Chinese Wushu, a whole bunch of other martial arts forms to complement my original base form or foundation form of Taekwondo.
Yeah. One of the ones that I was learning was Mugu Gaipan, and I'm still trying to master that. Sorry.
That's a dish, maybe.
Yeah. So would you say that your style when you're working with clients is more like a Mr. Miyagi, where you're teaching the fundamentals and how to minimize those scenarios, or like his opponent, where it's much more aggressive in your face and you're going after the people?
So that's a good question, Steve. We talk about, loving people come from loving environments. Hostile people sometimes grow up or come from a hostile environment. Mm-hmm. And they don't speak the same language. So yes, I train like a Miyagi, but then I also train like a Cobra Kai. It's a light switch. You have to be able to flip the switch. If I come across somebody that is irrational, unreasonable, and not willing to compromise and come up with a scenario that, hey, how can we both win? and they're just in my face and I have no other options or alternatives, then I'm going to have to flip the switch and go into the Cobra Kai mindset of thinking and handle the situation. What I've done is created a curriculum called CTS, which is Conflict and Threat Strategies. It's a focus on going from legal use of force, non-lethal legal use of force,
Sure.
to lethal use of force or justifiable lethal use of force. So everything that I teach is in accordance with our laws. What can I do? What can I say? And I had better be able to justify my actions in a court of law so that I don't get sued or I don't lose everything. There's a lot of training centers that you can go to that they go right into the violent side of things, and that's not always the best option, and that can cause you to lose your freedoms. So, going from legal, non-lethal use of force to justifiable lethal use of force, that's the training curriculum that I've come up with throughout my 40 years of training in the martial arts.
That makes total sense, right? Now, I've got kind of a two-part question for you, and I think this will make sense to you when I ask.
Sure.
So when you were growing up, you got bullied a lot, okay? And I'm going to guess that there may have been a switch when, as you started learning all of the martial arts, you probably got a little on the cocky side and said, I can take you out. And you probably did some of that. But I'm going to bet, did I hear that you authored an autobiography as well that tells some of that history of you?
Yes, the first book that I wrote was entitled Bully, Victim, or Hero. And that's how to assert yourself in an assertive manner without being a target for bullying or violence. I wrote this book so it would be a tool for parents, it would be a tool for teachers. If you're an adolescent, a teenager, middle school, high school age, it's something that you can read and get a little bit of insight on how I went from being the victim of violence to becoming the bully. I was not a good person at one point in my life, to now my main focus is teaching people how to be their own heroes or how to be heroes for other people. So Bully, Victim, or Hero is pretty much my story on my journey and how I overcome fears, how I overcome challenges in my life, personal life with my family, personal life in school, and professional life as an educator.
So it's your story of all of the junk that you had to deal with growing up as a young boy and being bullied, you becoming a bully, but then you becoming a teacher to help protect people or become their own hero.
Yes.
Is that what I understand?
Absolutely, yes. It's,
that is cool.
When I'm working with kids or when I'm working with women, I do a lot of role play, interactive role play. So I have to play the role of the bad guy. I have to play the role of the bully or the aggressor to see, I pressure test you to see how you handle the situation. Now, in a classroom situation, if you make a mistake, you get a do-over. I want you to make as many mistakes as you can in our classroom through a pressure test so that if it ever happens to you in real life, you're going to know what to say, you're going to know what to physically do to get yourself out of that bad situation. So it's the pressure testing and the reality-based training that I try to come up with to help students go from being a victim to becoming victorious in life.
So it's practice, 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 and when you practice enough, it becomes instinctive what you need to do.
Yeah, well, there's that saying, practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. You can go through the motions of doing something, but if you don't do it on an adrenaline stress manner where you're pressure tested and you're having to do things perfectly because you practice it perfect, you're not going to get the outcome that you want.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Okay, so you go to schools and you teach women and children and so forth, but you've written some other children's books too, haven't you?
Yes. I came up with the character, and this is on my jacket here, the logo on my jacket, Mushy the Martian. Mushy is an alien that comes to America. Hey, Mushy. And, the first book is Mushy the Martian, Dealing with Bullies. So I wrote these books as a tool for parents and teachers to kind of talk about sensitive topics that kids go through on a day-to-day basis and let them learn how to problem solve. So I've got three other characters in the book: Muggsy the Mad Dog, Shasta the Shy Dog, and Gutsy the Good Dog, that give three personality perspectives: a passive, an aggressive, and an assertive manner. So whenever Mushy has an issue or a problem, Mushy's parents are involved. Like you'll see, I've got another book, Mushy Following Directions, or Mushy Dealing with Strangers. Mushy's parents get involved, and the parents say, well, ask your friends what they would do. So they give the passive side of things, they give the aggressive side of how to handle a situation, and they'll give the assertive side. And at the end of the book, it's up to the parents or teachers that are helping read the book to the child. Ask the child, if you were Mushy, how would you handle that situation? And let the kids work on their critical thinking, their problem-solving process, so that if it ever really happens to them in real life, they've got a leg to stand on, pun intended for you. But they're able to handle themselves because of the life lessons they get out of these books.
That is very cool. So people, obviously, they can go to your website and buy them. Can they get the books online as well?
They're on all the social media sites or book selling sites like Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. Okay. All you gotta do is put my name in or put the name of the books in, The Adventures of Mushy the Martian or Bully, Victim, or Hero, and all of them will pop up. I do have a latest book that we might not have an image of, but it's a coloring activity book with Mushy the Martian that takes all three of these stories that I've got with Mushy and puts them into interactive activities for kids to work on as an extra stepping stone or tool to help send that message home.
Okay, now you do all of this for profit, but don't you also have another organization that is a nonprofit organization as well?
Well, all my books that I sell help fund my nonprofit organization. The nonprofit is Heroes in Action. Heroes in Action is a nonprofit organization dedicated to violence prevention education. And one of the biggest things that we try to do is we try to get donors and sponsors to purchase the books so that we can give them to the kids that we work with for free. So,
great idea.
That, or we use the books as a fundraising tool for schools where instead of selling candy, pizzas, or anything like that, they sell their books, and for every book that they sell, we give back $5 back to the school. So if they sell 1,000 books, they get $5,000 that their school can put towards computers or gym equipment or equipment for music or any art equipment, anything that they might need that are lacking in a school. So we try to help schools with fundraising through selling the books, and in turn we also go and work with the kids on our anti-bullying program on how to stand up for themselves and others.
Okay, so is the organization Heroes in Action, is that primarily for schools or is it for any organization?
Heroes in Action, we have a children's program for schools. We also do an outreach to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts or church youth groups. We have a women's self-defense program. We have a program for seniors, especially since I'm out here in Florida now. There's a lot of senior groups that we're going to try to reach out to and help promote safety for them. realtors, businesses, anyone that's out in the community that there's a safety issue, just like you had in the news the other day where there was a hostage situation at a synagogue. So you want to think about churches or any other organizations that they have safety concerns. We come in and we do active shooter training for adults to know what to do when confronted with somebody with weapons or without weapons that have bad intentions. So we're not just, I don't want people to misconceive us as just a children's anti-bully program. The whole spectrum of violence that you can think of from childhood to adulthood, the bully doesn't go away, they grow up. So you're still going to deal with them as an adult as well, and we have programs for that.
Okay, Ray, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want one tip. Let's say I get into a somewhat hostile situation and somebody is getting a little on the aggressive side with me. What can I do to diffuse? Obviously, broken leg in cast, I'm not going to run away.
Sure.
Is there something that I could do to help diffuse the situation? So can you give us just one little tip?
So this is where the verbal side, you've heard of the phrase verbal judo, but this is where the verbal side, the first line of personal safety or self-defense is verbal. Knowing what to say to de-escalate a situation or diffuse a situation is one of the first things we get to. You question without fear and follow that with a bold statement. So what, why, I, or stop. The what and the why is, what did I do to you? Why are you treating me this way? Why are you talking to me this way? I don't like it, and I need you to stop talking to me that way, or stop pushing me, or stop threatening my family. So with you being handicapped in a cast, and there's no way that you can distance yourself from the person, you have to come up with the language to get your bystanders, the people that are around you, to want to run to you. So a lot of times they'll say call 911 or call the police or anything like that, but most people don't want to get involved. So instead, it's knowing what to say that gets people to want to get involved. So if you are in an altercation and somebody is pointing a finger at you, whether you have kids or not, is like, one, I'm handicapped, stop hurting me, I can't do anything, leave me alone, stop messing with my family. When you bring the word family or children, more people are willing to help the family than there would be if a single male adult. Most people don't want to get involved. They might take out their cell phones and try to record what's going on, but I would rather them call 911. It's if you see something, say something. You need to know what to say to get people to see what's happening to you so that they can get the right kind of help. If they're not trained to help you, then hopefully they'll go get somebody that is trained, whether it's law enforcement or security guard or a bouncer or something like that. We want you to know what to say to get people to run to you.
Gotcha.
So
that makes total sense.
An example, I was doing a presentation for some senior citizens, and I had this older lady that she had a walker, and she was joking, saying, oh, I think I can take you. So I said, why don't we do this? Let's have a running race. We're going to run from this part of the room to this part of the room. And she's like, oh, you'll beat me. There's no way I can beat you. And I said, well, that's the point that I'm trying to make. You might not be able to get to a safe place, but you have to know what to say to get people to get to you. So it's knowing what to say to attract the right kind of attention to get the bystanders to come help you get out of that situation. So.
Right, that makes total sense. Thank you so much. I mean, I appreciate that right now, because as I'm out and about, I'm not going to be running away from many things. So knowing the right things obviously can be critical. All right, so how can people help you, Ray Amanat, and Heroes in Action? Is there funding things that you're looking for outside of the book sales, or
So
what are some other options?
we have fundraising, of course. You know, if you're on Facebook, if it's your birthday and you want to raise money, you can choose Heroes in Action as the nonprofit of choice to help raise money for. If you do a lot of shopping on Amazon, you can go to smile.amazon.com and do your normal shopping that you would do on Amazon. You could choose Heroes in Action as the nonprofit of choice that you want to donate to. So any purchase that you make on Amazon, a portion of that will go towards Heroes in Action. And that money will in turn be used to purchase books or help fund programs for different areas that, that need our services.
But then you're looking for speaking opportunities as well.
Yes. So whether it's schools, church organizations, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or any businesses that are interested in learning more about personal safety, what we do, it's kind of like a triangle. We have the lectures that promote living in safe environments, whether it's at home, at school, or at work. Then we have our hands-on seminars, which build a foundation of safety. And then those people that want more training, then we have one-on-one coaching or group classes that we offer at our new facility here in Port Richey that we're getting ready to open up within the next few weeks. So we're excited to help a lot of people.
So are you looking at other opportunities? I mean, I can imagine you taking some of your safety programs on the road. Is that something that you do as well?
Yes. We do travel, as long as the expenses are covered through sponsors, through grants, or through fundraising, or if the business just wants to cover our expenses for travel as well as time and the handouts that we give, we can go anywhere in the country and do our workshops or present on all things violence prevention.
Excellent. Ray, thank you so much. You've given me a lot of information that, frankly, I didn't know about you. I thought I knew all about you, but I learned a whole bunch this afternoon. So thank you very much.
Well, we're going to be learning more about each other and everyone else with this show that we're going to be doing, the Taboo Talk. So some of the topics that we'll be coming up with, of course, some of it will be business, health and fitness. Biggest taboo talk that most people say don't talk about with your family is politics. I have a speaker that I'm trying to get, we're trying to get him down, on human trafficking, that he is phenomenal. You do not want to miss this guy. He's a police officer that I worked with back in St. Louis, and he's a phenomenal presenter on human trafficking. He's dedicated his whole career to that. Getting into military and first responders, dealing with suicide, and trying to come up with as many different ways as we can help our military and first responders with different programs. Of course, one of our favorite topics to talk about is sex. You being the expert, I guess, or maybe I'm an expert, maybe we're not. I don't know, we'll find out. Of course, racism. I was a target of racism pretty much my whole childhood because my parents were immigrants from Iran, and coming from a Middle Eastern country during the time of the Iran hostage crisis, my brothers and I dealt with a lot of stuff, and racism is a big topic that's going on right now. Law enforcement in today's world. I've got a chief of police that I worked with for years back home in St. Louis that I would love, because he works closely with the FBI as well, and I'm going to try to get him as one of the people that we interview. And I know you're going to talk about parenting, and you have your network of people to talk about death and mental health. So there's plenty of topics that we're going to be talking about that we're excited to. Steve, if you want to add on to, we got about a minute or so left before we got to close out. If you want to add anything else, I'm excited to be on this venture with you, with this Taboo Talk show.
It's going to be fun. You know, one of the biggest challenges that I work with in working with couples, whether they're young or old, is the whole aspect of communication, but primarily it's listening skills. And
what was that?
Excuse me. Just pay attention, Ray. Come on, pay attention. But that's one of the biggest challenges. You know, you've got a husband that works outside the home. Maybe the wife works around the house doing the typical things. Maybe she works outside the home as well. But a lot of times people don't understand that they need some cool down time when they first walk through the doors. Sure. And a lot of times the spouse doesn't recognize that. So they start talking about all the stuff that's going on and they haven't had a chance to decompress. So we'll be talking about communication. We'll talk about improving relationships. We're going to be talking a lot about self-worth. How do you feel about yourself and where do you get your self-worth? Those types of things. Those are some of the critical things that we just simply don't want to talk about. We just want to go on with life.
Sure. So, with this 10 seconds left, I am Ray Amanat with Heroes in Action, and we have Steve Reed with
Stephen Reed Ministries.
And we are Taboo Talk. Thank you for watching.